Chapter 5, Section 4 is on dividing polynomials, and the easiest way to divide a polynomial that has an expression divided by a linear expression is using synthetic division. The word synthetic means fake or man-made, so this division is much shorter than long division, kind of allows for ease in solving the problems. So there are two things you need to consider before you synthetically divide. The first is that whatever polynomial you start with is in standard form with every place there. Meaning, in this case, this is a cubic. If it starts with an x cubed, I have to have an x squared term, I have to have an x to the first, and I have to have a constant. And this one does. So once you realize it's in standard form with every place there, write the coefficients. The coefficients are the numbers found in front of each term. So in this case, it's a 1, a 14, a 51, and a negative 54. The factor that you're dividing by, its root, which is the opposite sign, goes in what I would call a little half box. You leave a little bit of room and draw a line. The process of synthetic division is always the same. Start by bringing down the very first term, regardless of what it is that comes down. And then you start a process of multiplying and adding, multiplying and adding. So the first thing you want to do is multiply. So I'll show you arrows in the first one. I'm going to multiply these two. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, and I put it there. And then I combine. Negative 14 plus a negative 2 is a negative 16. And then I multiply again. So you probably don't want to put these arrows down, but I'll show you where they're coming from. I'm multiplying these two. Negative 2 times negative 16 is 32. And then, that goes there. And then I combine. 51 plus 32 is 83. And then I multiply. Negative 2 times 83 is negative 166. And I add. Negative 54 plus negative 166 is negative 220. So the numbers that you're left with become the coefficients of your answer. Now, because you started with an x cubed and you divided by an x, your answer would be a power of 1 less than you started. So because you started with an x cubed, your answer is actually going to be an x squared. So my answers are 1x squared, and I'm not going to write the 1 because it's not necessary, minus 16x plus 83. This last number right here is always a remainder. So a remainder of negative 220. So that's my final answer. If you look at number 2, this is a quartic, an x to the 4th, and it has a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, and a constant. So take a second and copy down the coefficients. 1, negative 5, 5, 7, and negative 12. Because the factor we're dividing by is an x minus 4, a positive 4 will go in the half box. Always start the process by bringing down the first number. 4 times 1 is 4. If I add negative 5 and 4, I get negative 1. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. If I add 5 and negative 4, I get a positive 1. 4 times 1 is 4, and 7 plus 4 is 11. 4 times 11 is 44. Negative 12 plus 44 is 32. Because I started with a quartic, an x to the 4th, my answer will be a cubic, an x third. So it's 1x cubed minus 1x squared plus 1x plus 11 with a remainder of 32. Number 3. Number 3 is considerably trickier because you see that it's a quartic and it does have its x cubed term, but it's missing an x squared. So if I were you, I'd take a second and rewrite the polynomial, x to the 4th plus 2x cubed, but then I'm going to write a plus 0x squared because it's not there. And I'm going to use that as a placeholder to hold my place when dividing. Then continue plus x minus 3, which means when I copy my coefficients, there are 1, a 2, a 0, a 1, and a negative 3. In the little half box, because my factor is an x minus 1, my root is a positive 1. Start by bringing down the first number. 1 times 1 is 1, combined is 3. 1 times 3 is 3, combined is 3. 1 times 3 is 3, combined is 4. And 1 times 4 is 4, combined is 1. Because I started with an x to the 4th, my answer will start with an x cubed. So it's 1x cubed plus 3x squared plus 3x plus 4. And that last number, which is a 1, ends up being my remainder. You take a look at the second you try it, a little trickier than the first. You actually need two placeholders. You're missing an x cubed term and you're missing an x term, and so you end up needing them both when it comes to synthetically dividing. The second part of this synthetic division doesn't really change very much, other than the fact that whatever you're dividing by is a fraction. But with the use of a calculator, that really shouldn't pose much of an issue. If you take a look at number 1, I have an x cubed, an x squared, an x, and a constant. So I'll start by copying my coefficients. 4, negative 8, 1, and 3. Because my factor is an x plus 1/2, that means my root is a negative 1/2. Start by bringing down the 4. Negative 1/2 times 4 is negative 2. Combined with the negative 8 is negative 10. Negative 1/2 times negative 10 is 5. Combined with the 1 is 6. And negative 1/2 times 6 is negative 3. Combined with the 3 is 0. Because my original polynomial was a cubic, my coefficients are going to become a quadratic, an x squared. So it's 4x squared minus 10x plus 6. This number right here is a remainder of 0, and because it's 0, you don't need to write it. If you write R0, it's not wrong, it's just not necessary. Number 2. Number 2 is a cubic. I have the x cubed, the x squared, the x, and the constant, so I'll copy the coefficients. They're 6, negative 17, negative 4, and 3. In the little half box, I'll put a positive 1/3, opposite of the factor. Start by bringing down the 6. 1/3 times 6 is 2. Combined with the negative 17 is negative 15. 1/3 times negative 15 is negative 5. Combined with the negative 4 is negative 9. And 1/3 times negative 9 is negative 3. Combined with the 3 is 0. When that last number is 0, my confidence is considerably higher. Like, you expect the remainder to be 0. It doesn't have to be, for sure. We did a whole bunch in the beginning of this lesson that weren't, but it is nice when it is. Because I started with a cubic, the coefficients that I'm left with are quadratic. So 6x squared minus 15x minus 9, and the remainder is 0.